Hi everyone, it's Dr. Atkinson here, and today we're diving into the assessment of respiratory function. Whether you're at the bedside or working in the community, understanding how the respiratory system works and what goes wrong when it doesn't is absolutely essential. Respiratory disorders are everywhere, from simple upper respiratory infections to life-threatening failure in the ICU. Nurses are often the first to spot when something's off. In fact, changes in respiratory status are some of the earliest signs of clinical deterioration. That means you've got to know what normal looks like, what abnormal looks like, and when something subtle might be the start of a major problem. Let's start at the beginning with anatomy and physiology. The respiratory system, upper and lower tracts. The respiratory system has two main parts, the upper tract and the lower tract. Together they manage ventilation, that's the in and out movement of air, and gas exchange, which happens in the lungs. The upper respiratory tract includes the nose, sinuses, pharynx, tonsils, adenoids, larynx, and trachea. This part of the system filters, warms, and humidifies the air. Think of it like the bouncer at the club, only letting in clean, moist air to keep the lungs happy. The lower respiratory tract includes the bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, and lungs. This is where the magic of gas exchange happens. Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out, and it relies on a healthy cardiovascular system to deliver that oxygen-rich blood where it needs to go. Let's talk upper airway anatomy. The nose filters dust and pathogens, warms and humidifies the air, and uses tiny cilia to push mucus back toward the throat. The paranasal sinuses, that's frontal, ethmoid, sphenoid, and maxillary, also help with warming air and give your voice its tone. They're common infection sites too. The pharynx is the throat, a shared space for air and food. It houses the tonsils and adenoids, which are part of the lymphatic system and act like the body's frontline defenders. Then there's the larynx, your voice box. It protects the airway during swallowing, helps you cough, and of course, lets you speak. Key parts include the epiglottis, vocal cords, and several cartilage structures, including the thyroid cartilage, aka the Adam's apple, and the cricoid cartilage. The trachea, or windpipe, connects the larynx to the lungs and keeps air flowing smoothly. It's reinforced by C-shaped cartilage rings that keep it open but allow some flexibility. The lower airway. Lungs, bronchi, and alveoli. The lungs are elastic, sponge-like organs divided into lobes, 3 on the right, 2 on the left. They're wrapped in a slippery double-layer membrane called the pleura that reduces friction during breathing. Air moves through the bronchial tree, getting smaller and smaller until it reaches the alveoli. These tiny sacs, about 300 million of them, are the site of gas exchange. They're lined with type 1 and type 2 cells, and alveolar macrophages help trap and clear debris. Type 1 cells handle the gas exchange surface. Type 2 cells produce surfactant, a substance that reduces surface tension and prevents alveolar collapse. Without surfactant, lungs would stiffen and breathing would become much harder. Pulmonary circulation and perfusion. The pulmonary circulation is a low-pressure system. In a healthy upright person, gravity pulls more blood toward the base of the lungs, so you get better perfusion at the bottom than at the top. But perfusion also depends on alveolar pressure. If the pressure inside the alveoli gets too high, like with overdistension, it can actually compress the surrounding capillaries and block blood flow. That balance between ventilation, airflow, and perfusion, blood flow, is called the VQ ratio, and it's critical for gas exchange. VQ mismatch. A normal VQ ratio is 1:1. Air and blood match perfectly. But there are 3 types of mismatch. 1. Low VQ shunt. Blood gets to the lungs, but ventilation is poor. Think pneumonia or mucus plug. 2. High VQ dead space. Air gets to the lungs, but there's not enough blood flow. Think pulmonary embolism. 3. Silent unit. No air and no blood. This is what happens in things like pneumothorax or severe RDS. VQ mismatch can cause hypoxia, low oxygen in the tissues. The severity depends on how much blood is being shunted past areas with poor ventilation. Mechanics of breathing. Ventilation depends on the movement of the diaphragm and chest wall. During inspiration, the diaphragm contracts, expanding the chest and lowering intrathoracic pressure, pulling air in. Expiration is usually passive. The diaphragm relaxes, pressure rises, and air flows out. Let's break down the key concepts. Air pressure variance. Air flows from high to low pressure. Airway resistance. Narrowed airways equals more resistance equals more work to breathe. Compliance. This refers to how stretchy the lungs are. Low compliance, stiff lungs, makes breathing hard, like in ARDS or fibrosis. High compliance, floppy lungs, happens in emphysema. Lung volumes and capacities. We measure lung function using a few different terms. Tidal volume, TV, normal breath in and out around 500 millimeters. Inspiratory reserve volume, IRV, extra air you can inhale after a normal breath. Expiratory reserve volume, ERV, extra air you can exhale. Residual volume, RV, air left in the lungs after full exhalation. Then we've got capacities, vital capacity, VC, max breath in, max breath out. Inspiratory capacity, IC, how much you can inhale after a normal exhale. Functional residual capacity, FRC, what's left in the lungs after a normal exhale. Total lung capacity, TLC, all the air your lungs can hold. Changes in these volumes can help identify obstructive or restrictive diseases. Gas exchange, partial pressures. Gas exchange depends on partial pressure gradients. Oxygen in the alveoli diffuses into the blood because its partial pressure is higher in the alveoli than in the capillaries. Carbon dioxide goes the opposite way. This process is driven by pressure gradients and occurs rapidly across the thin alveolar capillary membrane. Oxygen transport. Oxygen travels in two ways. One, dissolved in plasma, very small amount, measured by PaO2. Two, bound to hemoglobin, most of it measured by SaO2. Each gram of hemoglobin can carry 1.34 milliliters of oxygen. So if you have 15 grams per deciliter of hemoglobin and 100% saturation, your blood can carry about 20 milliliters of oxygen per 100 milliliters of blood. Oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. This curve shows the relationship between PaO2 and SaO2. A right shift means more oxygen is released to the tissues, useful during fever, exercise, or acidosis. A left shift means oxygen binds more tightly, less is released. Even if PaO2 drops from 100 to 80 millimeter Herms, saturation stays near 95%. But if it falls below 40 millimeter Herms, tissue oxygenation is at serious risk. Carbon dioxide transport. CO2 is mostly carried in red blood cells, about 90%. Only about 5% is dissolved in plasma as PCO2, but that tiny amount is crucial for maintaining acid-base balance. Neurologic control of ventilation. Breathing is controlled by the medulla and pons with help from the phrenic nerve. There are also several reflex systems. Chemoreceptors respond to changes in pH, CO2, and oxygen levels. Stretch receptors prevent overinflation. Proprioceptors in joints and muscles respond to movement. Baroreceptors adjust breathing based on blood pressure changes. All of these systems work together to fine-tune your breathing in response to your body's needs. Gerontologic considerations. As we age, lung function naturally declines. Alveoli lose elasticity. Vital capacity decreases. Chest wall stiffens. Dead space increases. Even with these changes, older adults can function well, but they may tire more easily during strenuous activity and take longer to recover. These age-related changes also reduce their respiratory reserve during illness or surgery.